It's Patrick Hilario here, aka Dasein the Philosopher. Hope you guys are doing well. So today's video, I'd like to talk to you guys about John Locke, the philosopher, and the goal of education. This is actually the title of Shirley Lalacia's philosophical article, which explores John Locke and the goal of education. The reason I've been doing this and reading this article is because in the summer of 2018, I actually did a philosophy tour out in Europe, and the purpose of this tour was to explore three things essentially. So the first is human mortality. The second is education, and what is this? And I should probably understand education if I'm going to be an educator for the rest of my life. And thirdly was to better understand myself and to give me time in my life to just figure who I am, what I want to do, and what is my own being in general. So to get back onto the topic of John Locke and the goal of education, I will be trying to summarize this article with the same title and basically trying to explore what was John Locke's perspective on education. I'm still trying to figure out my own philosophy of education, and I have certain principles that I hold as foundational to my own philosophy of education. However, by exploring the ideas of 24 different philosophers during my stay in Europe, I believe that I'm able to have 24 different perspectives on philosophy of education and education in general, so that I can use these perspectives almost as a toolbox for me to be able to improve on my educational and teaching techniques. In other words, to better understand what is pedagogy and what and why am I pursuing this as not only a career but as a vocation and something that I'll be dedicating my life to. So let's get started. So John Locke and the goal of education. This article is kind of broken down into a few questions. So here we have four essential questions of basically exploring education and John Locke's ideas. And the answers that I'll be presenting here are actually John Locke's ideas as interpreted by Shirley Lalacia, the author of this article. So the first question that is asked and that John Locke reflected on is, what is education? And according to John Locke, education is that which gives us the necessary knowledge which is needed in our daily lives and in daily living. Very empiricist kind of point of view of John Locke, in that education should be useful in our daily lives, not necessarily to just have a job or just be able to know things, but we should be able to use the things that we learn through a good education to be able to use on a day-to-day basis. The next question here is, how does an individual acquire knowledge? And according to John Locke, knowledge is acquired through experience. It's not something that we think about and then is then revealed to us, but according to Locke, one must actually gain the experience and get the references in real life to then be able to acquire this knowledge and then hopefully be able to use it on a day-to-day basis. The next question that John Locke asks is, what are the importance and uses of education? And according to John Locke, the importance and uses of education is to have the ability to shape a person's character and to tame desire with reason. So for John Locke, this idea of education is not just to have the ability to do certain things, but it's to develop one's character. And the way I relate this to myself is that my education is what allowed me to become who I am, and to build a character that, one, I am proud of, and two, that offers value to the world. That's just my personal opinion, but John Locke really believes that education is important because this is how we will shape a person's character, and also to develop reason or the ability to think so that we can tame our desires. In that, I believe this could be linked to the idea that human desires can be detrimental to whatever we want to achieve, not only as an individual but also as a collective. So if one gets to go through a good education, according to John Locke, then this person would be able to understand their own desires and not be a slave to these desires, but also be able to tame it. So that, an example, even if one person really loves chocolate cake, this person is not eating this every day because there are consequences to one's health related to that. But instead, this individual understands that yes, chocolate cake is good and they have a desire for this, but it's not something that should be eaten on a day-to-day basis, and that maybe it is more reasonable to have a healthy diet. Again, this links to John Locke's idea that this ability to tame one's desire by using their reason is something that they should be using on a day-to-day basis, just because our desires do have this capacity to have a certain control over us. But for John Locke, for a person to receive this good education and be able to apply what they learn through education on a day-to-day basis, this means that they are putting more emphasis and importance on their reasonable thought and reasonable ways of acting in the world than just following their desires. Finally, John Locke's last question in this article is that what can an education contribute to society? And for John Locke, his answer is fairly simple. It is that a person who is educated can contribute to society in the way that they can act and carry themselves virtuously. And I believe that this idea of being virtuous and having virtue ingrained in their character is something that John Locke may have borrowed from Aristotle, because Aristotle talked about becoming a virtuous person in his work through philosophy. With that, it forces me to ask the question, what is virtue? And I believe that this is one of the essential questions that must be answered so that anyone can become an educated person, not necessarily through formal education or schooling, so to say, but the education that a person will choose to continue throughout their life and hopefully become this virtuous person who can act and carry themselves in a virtuous fashion. But again, it's important to reflect on the question of, well, what is virtue? And if I don't understand what virtue is, how can I become this virtuous person who not only acts this way, but also carries themselves out this way? And yeah, so I hope you guys got some value out of this. Again, just to reiterate, according to John Locke, education is that which is necessary, or the necessary knowledge needed for a person to go on with their daily lives, and that a person acquires knowledge through experience, according to John Locke. Also, that the importance of education, according to John Locke, is so that we have the ability as humans to shape, and education is to shape a person's character and tame their desire with reason. And then finally, what can educated person do in society or contribute to society? According to John Locke, it's the idea that they can carry out themselves and act virtuously. So again, hope you guys got a little bit of value out of this short little presentation. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time, and I'll continue doing my research on the 24 other philosophers that I visited during my stay in Europe. And hopefully not only can we start the conversation of what is education and why is it important, but that we can actually start using these concepts on a day-to-day basis to live virtuously. So again, it's J Hilario here, aka Dasein the Philosopher, and hope you guys have an amazing rest of your weekend.